This is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to make this crochet cactus pot holder. If you follow the link in the description, you'll find a link to the written pattern as well as all the supplies you need, and the right and left-handed video tutorials in case you've ended up on the wrong one today. Now, if you look at the written pattern, you'll see there's actually two different crochet cactus pot holders, a tall cactus and a ball cactus. This video will focus on the tall cactus. To make this pattern, you'll need Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie. I've used lime and coral colorways. You'll also need a US H hook. This one is a Furls Streamline. I recommend that you use stitch markers. These are by Clover. And of course, you'll need a yarn needle and scissors like you do for pretty much every project. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, first a quick look at our finished tall cactus pot holder. I started from the bottom up, and there are two rounds of edging worked, one in green and one in the coral. So we're actually working our way up here with post stitches. Then we've got a little branch off for a little side branch of a cactus. I live in Iowa. I don't know a whole lot about cactus anatomy, so bear with me. But the little branch side off part here, and then we come up around the top. Then finally we make the flower and work all the way around. So that's how it comes together. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so you can see I'm starting with my green color. This is the lime colorway, and I've got a slip knot on my hook, so I'm ready to begin. The first row, which is the wrong side row, hence the abbreviation WS in the written pattern, is made with 23 foundation double crochets. If you haven't made foundation double crochets before, I do have a separate full-length tutorial just for that stitch linked out at the link in the description. So I'm going to begin with 2 chains. You can see I've made right here. Then to make my first foundation double crochet, I'm going to yarn over and go into the chain furthest from the hook, the very first chain we made. And I like to work into the back hump. I'd like to point that out. I just think it gives a better finished edge for this. So after I've gone to that furthest chain from the hook, I'll yarn over and pull up a loop. And that loop I just pulled up, that one right there, will count as the chain at the bottom of our first double crochet stitch. So this is a way of making the chains and the stitches at the same time. So I've got my chain at the bottom of my stitch, so I need to make the stitch itself. So I'll yarn over and pull up a loop just through that first loop, and this will begin my double crochet the way it normally goes, where I yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. There we are. So that is our first foundation double crochet. To make the other 22 of them, we'll yarn over, go into the bottom of that one we just made, under those 2 loops. Remember we said those counted as the chain there right at the bottom? So we go right into there, yarn over, pull up a loop, and right there we've got our new chain for the bottom of this next stitch. So to finish this one, we yarn over, pull through just the first loop, then yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. And that's our second foundation double crochet. Now, as I mentioned, there is a full-length video tutorial for this linked out at the link in the description. So I'm going to go ahead and make 21 more of these foundation double crochets, and I will see you at the end of row 1. Okay, so here I am at the end of row 1, where I've got 23 foundation double crochets. If you can't get the hang of the foundation double crochet, or you just don't like it, that's okay. You can still begin this pattern with regular stitches. You just want to start with a chain of 26, you'd want a chain of 25. You'd want a chain of 25, skip those first 2, and then just start double crocheting in each chain across. The end result will be about the same, so it's really just whichever you prefer. I just like to begin with the foundation double crochet that way, especially when I'm designing, because then if I need to pull out a couple stitches, I don't have to pull out the whole row to pull out just those chains. Okay, so back to row 2. We're going to be turning and working on the right side now. So we're going to begin with a chain 1, and then a half double crochet in the very first stitch. There we are. Easy enough. Then we're going to begin our repeat that will take us across this row until we get to the last stitch. We're going to work a front post double crochet around the next stitch. So just come right to the next one. And then a back post double crochet around the next. Again, if you are not familiar with post stitches, I also have a separate tutorial for that, but I'll walk you through them really quickly right here. We've done a front post and a back post, so we're back to a front post. We yarn over and go around the post of the next stitch from front to back to front again. So that means after I've yarned over, I come to the side of the post of the next stitch from the front, go to the back, around it, and back to the front again. Then I can yarn over, pull up my loop, and finish my stitch like I normally would for a double crochet. There we go. Now, for a back post double crochet, it's very similar, but we're coming from the other direction. So I yarn over again, I come to this next post right here, and this time I'm going to come from behind and go around the post with a stitch in the front and pop back out the back. And it's okay to flip your work over so you can see your hook like this if it makes it easier. Then you can yarn over, pull that loop around, and again, finish your double crochet as normal. There we go. And you can see that starts creating a lot of texture with the front post and back post stitches. So I'm just going to continue alternating back post, front post, back post, front post, all the way across. And then when I get to the end, there will actually be 2 stitches remaining in after our repeat. So I will make those last 2 stitches with you in just a moment. Okay, so here I am at the end of row 2. Now our first stitch was a half double crochet, and then we front post, back post, front post, back post, all the way across till we get to the last 2 stitches. You can see I ended on a back post, which was the last stitch of our repeat. So I'm going to work one more front post just to sort of balance out that first front post on this one, since we've got an odd number of stitches. And then on the very last stitch, I'm going to work a half double crochet again to match that other end. So that is how you make row 2. Now, row 3, let me pull up just a little bit more yarn here. Row 3 is going to be pretty much the same, except we want to match the stitches in the previous row. So what does that mean? We're going to use the stitches in the previous row to guide us, or of course the written pattern. So we'll start with a chain 1 and work a half double crochet right in the top of that last half double crochet we just made. Then we can look at the stitches in front of us. Now we know that this was a front post stitch, but from this side it looks like a back post stitch. So that's how we're going to treat it, and we're going to do the same thing. We'll yarn over and make a back post stitch right around that essentially back post stitch. Even though we know how it was made, because we're seeing it from our side, we can call it how it appears. There we go. So that's a back post stitch around the first one. Now this one from this side looks like a front post stitch, so we'll yarn over and go around it like a front post stitch. So we're just maintaining essentially our post stitch cables up the body of the cactus at this point. So anytime I come across one that's on the front there, I'll work it like a front post stitch, or I'll work a front post stitch around it. When it's in back, I'll work around it like a back post stitch. If we did the opposite, if we worked this row the same as the previous row, then we would end up with something very different, more of a basket weave pattern. So I'm just going to work my way all the way across until I come to those last 2 stitches again. And then of course I'm going to be maintaining the pattern there as well. So I will see you in just a moment here when we get to the end of row 3. Okay, and I'm just about at the end of row 3, and you can see I've got my half double crochet there, and then our repeat is back post, front post, all the way across to the last 2 stitches. And then of course, to cap that off, we'll work one more back post. If I can, right there. There we go. And then finish off with a half double crochet right in the top of that first half double crochet of the previous row, like so. So here we're just maintaining our 23 stitches across and working in pattern. This is the back side. I can tell that because this side has the post stitches that are a little bit closer to the edges. But you can see we're basically maintaining those cables across there. So for the next few rows, rows 4 through 9, you're just going to repeat the last 2 rows, rows 2 and 3 that I've just shown you. So let me pull up the finished one again here so we can take another look. You can see there was row 1, and we're just going to work all the way up here until we get to row 10, which is where we start branching off. So on our little swatch here, I'm going to go ahead and jump to row 10. Otherwise, you just want to repeat rows 4 through 9 are just repeats of rows 2 and 3 worked in pattern so that you maintain these cables on either side going all the way up. So let's go ahead and jump to row, it would be row 10 would be the next row where we start breaking apart for our little cactus branch. So let me get my yarn back on the hook here. There we are. And a little tip there, whenever you've taken your hook out of the loop and you need to put it back on, you can always check to make sure the loop hasn't gotten twisted, because that can happen very easily. When you pull on the working yarn, the part that moves right there should be in front of the hook. So there we go, just a little extra tip. So on with row 10. We're going to start with a chain 1. And of course, turning back to work the other direction, I'm going to half double crochet in the first stitch again. And then I'm going to work a front post in the next stitch, which is easy to see. We've got a front post presenting right there for us. We want to maintain those as much as possible. And then back post double crochet in the next. And then we're going to repeat that again. This is the section in the brackets if you're following along with the written pattern. So another front post and another back post. There we are. Then we're going to work a front post double crochet, half double crochet, and front post double crochet again, all in the next stitch. So that's this stitch right here. Let me get it nice and centered. This is the next front post double crochet here. So this is going to be a big increase. We're going to yarn over and go around it just as we normally would for a front post double crochet. So that part's normal. Then we're going to half double crochet right in the top of that same stitch. Normally, if we're working even, when we work around the post for the post stitch, we just leave those top 2 loops unworked because there's already a stitch there, essentially. This time, since we're increasing, we're going to go right into the top and make that half double crochet. There we go. Then we're going to front post double crochet back around that same stitch again. So since there's already one there, I'm going to go ahead and give it a little tug to pull it to the top of the post, and then I'm going to go right underneath it. Just right underneath where you worked the previous one. And work that off as you normally would. And now we've got our little increase there. We've increased by 2 stitches, and we've started branching off for our little cactus branch. So from there, we just need to follow basically the established pattern across. The next stitch, of course, is a back post, so we'll go around that one with another back post double crochet. There we are. And then the next one is a front post, and we'll just maintain the pattern on across. So work the same stitch into the stitch that presents itself. When you get to the end of row 10, of course, we will finish up with a half double crochet in that very last stitch. Again, just maintaining our pattern. Since we've increased by 2 stitches, at the end of row 10, there should be 25 stitches total. And when we start making the increases like this, it's always a great time to start counting your stitches a little bit just to make sure you get this part established really well. So I'm almost at the end of row 10. I've just got a few more stitches to make here. So let's go ahead and make those together. While I'm making those stitches, I'll go ahead and make a note. I wanted to talk about, I wanted to make sure to mention on this video that these are pot holders or trivets, or basically however you wanted to use them in the kitchen, of course. You can get creative with it. But I also want to point out that these are made with Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie, not just because I love the yarn, but because it is 100% cotton. And anytime you are making something to come into contact with hot stuff, like in the kitchen, then you want to make sure to use either a cotton or 100% wool yarn. If you use anything with acrylic in it, it can melt. And that is not the kitchen scene that you're hoping for. So if you're making these for a purely decorative purpose, like maybe to put under a plant pot, then you could go ahead and use something like Super Saver or any other acrylic. But if you're using it for use in the kitchen, I really do recommend that you use 100% cotton yarn. It's just a little bit easier to wash and take care of, but of course, the most important part, it won't melt. So that was perfectly timed. There we are at the end of row 10. I've made my half double crochet in my last stitch, and I'm ready for row 11. So we'll chain 1 and work back the other direction. Half double crochet again in that first stitch. And then we're just going to maintain the stitch pattern until we get over here for this branch again. So we're going to start off with a back post double crochet in the next stitch, and then a front post double crochet in the next. And we're just going to repeat this all the way across until there are 8 stitches remaining in this row. So I will see you as soon as we get to those last 8 stitches. Okay, so here I am on row 11. You can see I've just maintained our stitch pattern all the way across until I come to the last 8 stitches of this row. Now, how are we going to treat these? Let's do it together. First, we're going to let me try that again. First, we're going to work a back post double crochet in the next stitch. You can see this is where we increase, so it's a little tricky, but right in there, there is a back post stitch to work around. So we want to find that post and work our back post double crochet right around it. Then we're going to make 2 half double crochets in the top of the half double crochet. So that half double crochet we worked right in between our stitches, we just want to go right into the top of that stitch and work 2 half double crochets right in there. So there's 1 and there's 2. Then we're going to work a back post double crochet in the next stitch. So remember that was the other side of our increase back here. Just going to come back down in there, get that back post double crochet made. And then we're almost at the end, and we're just going to maintain it, the stitch pattern here to the end. So front post around the next, back post around the next. Looks like front post one more time, and then back post one more time. And finally, we end with a half double crochet in that very last stitch, of course. There we are. And you can see, this is the wrong side. If I turn it over to the right side here, you can see our little branch is starting to form off to the side here. So let me get this back on my hook, and we'll make row 12 together. So row 12 begins with the chain 1 and half double crochet in the first stitch. Then we're going to front post double crochet in the next stitch and back post double crochet in the stitch after that twice. So there's a front and a back, then another front and another back. There we are. That was the part in the brackets if you're following along with the written pattern. Then we front post double crochet in the next stitch. Then we single crochet in the next 2 half double crochets. Sorry, you pull up a little bit more yarn there. There we go. So you can see we've come to those 2 half double crochets next. So I just want to go ahead and work a single crochet into the top of each of those. 1 and 2. And then I am going to go back to my stitch pattern. Front post double crochet in the next stitch. And then we're set up to work our asterisk portion, our repeat, back post double crochet, front post, back front, all the way across until we get to the end. And of course, half double crochet in that very last stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and make those stitches, and I will see you at the end of row 12. Okay, so I just finished row 12, and you can see, hopefully, we've got our little branching off for our little thumb area of the cactus here, our little branch. So in row 13, we're going to work back across here, but we're going to sort of abandon these stitches and come back to them a little bit later. So let's go ahead and make row 13 together. Start again with a chain 1, of course, and half double crochet in the first stitch. And then we're going to work a back post double crochet in the next stitch. There we are. And begin our repeat, front post in the next, a back post in the next. And again, we're going to work this all the way across, just maintaining the post stitch pattern until there are 8 stitches remaining. So let's go ahead and get to that point. If you need to pause the video, I'm going to get to the point where I have 8 stitches left in row 13. If you want to catch up, I'll see you when we get there. Okay, so here we are at row 13, and you can see I've worked all the way across, just maintaining the stitch pattern till I get right to the end here, and I have 8 stitches remaining. This is where our little branch off is happening for our little side branch of a cactus. So instead of working on across these, I'm just going to work a half double crochet in the next stitch, and then leave the last 7 stitches all unworked. So this will be the end of our rows from now on as we head up the rest of our cactus, and we'll come back and finish off that little branch a little later. So for rows 14 and 19, you're basically just going to go back to repeating rows 2 and 3. That's where we were working even, straight up. And of course, now you'll only have 19 stitches across rather than 23. But you can see, as long as we just maintain that stitch pattern, that'll get us some more height. So go ahead and work rows 2 and 3. That would be 3 more times. And let me pull up our finished cactus. And you can see right there is our little branch off. So that gives you the height right there, rows 14 through 19, until we're ready to start decreasing at the very top of our cactus for a rounded shape. So we'll pick back up with be row 20 here in just a moment. Okay, so for the sake of time, I'm going to pretend I've worked all the way through row 19, and now I'm ready to begin row 20. So we're going to start with a chain 1, and then a half double crochet in the first stitch. Very familiar, right? There we go. Then I'm going to work a front post double crochet 2 together over the next 2 front post double crochet stitches, skipping the back post double crochet in between. Bit of a mouthful. Let me show you how it's done. We've got that first front post double crochet stitch there, so we know where that is. We go around it like we normally would, pull up our loop, yarn over, and pull through 2. There we are, but I'm going to stop with 2 loops remaining on the hook, yarn over again, skip the back post double crochet that's next, jump over to this next front post double crochet, and go around it. Then when I've got 3 loops left on the hook, I will yarn over and pull through all 3 to finish the stitch. So that's our first big decrease there. We've gone down by 2 stitches because we've turned all 3 of these stitches, these 2 front post stitches and the back post we skipped in between, into 1 stitch. Next, we're going to work a back post double crochet in the next stitch. So that very next back post double crochet right there. Then we're going to work our repeat on across, almost to the end. We're going to front post double crochet in the next stitch, followed by a back post in the next stitch 5 times. So that was our first copy of the repeat. Front post, back post, that makes our second copy. Front post, back post, that'd be our third copy. Front post and back post, that's our fourth copy, almost there. Front post again, back post once more. And then we're ready to do just a little bit more decreasing here before we finish off our row. So I'm going to do the same maneuver again with the front post, double crochet 2 together, skipping that back post right in between. So I'll yarn over, go around that first front post there, pull up my loop, stop when I have 2 loops left on the hook, yarn over again, skip right over that back post, come over to the front post, go around it, and then with 3 loops left on the hook, yarn over and pull through all 3. And then, of course, I've got to put that half double crochet right in the end there. There we go. Anchors it right down. So that is how you make row 20. At this point, you'll have decreased down to just 15 stitches. Row 21 is just like row 3. So if you don't remember row 3, that's just chain 1, half double crochet in the first stitch, and then we maintain our stitch pattern, right across. The tricky part with this one, sorry, my yarn's getting a little caught there. There we go. So the tricky part with this one is that these decreases, you want to make sure not to accidentally go around just one part of them. You need to go around them and treat them as all one big stitch. So I'm going to work a back post double crochet around that. Remember that was our decrease there we just made, our front post 2 together. So I want to make sure to go all the way around that entire stitch when I make this back post double crochet. And that's one of the easiest places to mess up this row. Even though it's very simple, you're just working in stitch pattern like we've been doing all along, it's an easy place to accidentally add stitches back in. So when you get to the end of row 21, you should again just have 15 stitches, just like the last row, but you want to count them to make sure you didn't accidentally end up adding a couple by going around just part of that decrease. So if you get to the end of row 21 and you've got 15 stitches, then you know you're on the right track. So I will see you when we get there and we'll make row 22 together. Okay, so as I stated, at the end of row 21, you should have 15 stitches, and then you'll be ready to make row 22, which is our final row at the top here before we start working our edging. But of course, we'll have to come back and do that. But before we do that, row 22. We half double crochet in the first stitch, then front post double crochet in the next, and back post double crochet in the stitch after that. And then we're going to do another one of those big decreases. Front post double crochet 2 together, skipping the back post in between. So I'm going to go around the front post, stop with 2 loops left on the hook, jump over to the next front post, easy peasy. 3 loops left on the hook, yarn over, and pull through all 3. Then I am going to back post double crochet in the next stitch, front post double crochet in the stitch after that. A little bit more yarn there. Back post double crochet in the next stitch. There we are. And then another decrease. Front post double crochet 2 together over the next 2 front post stitches, skipping the back post in between. Just like that. Whoops, there we are. Then finally, before I go on to the next stitch, I want to place a stitch marker in that stitch we just made, that second decrease in this row. I'm just going to leave a stitch marker hanging out right there. That's going to come in later when we add our edging. So to continue this row, after that one, then I back post double crochet in the next stitch, front post in the stitch after that, and of course finish it all off with a half double crochet in the last stitch there. There we are. Now, at this point, you can see we've got our nice rounded top. And of course, I've just got a little stubby guy here, so I'm not making the full size one. But you can see I've got 11 stitches worked across the top. I've got my stitch marker in there. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and break my yarn. I just want to leave a decent enough end there to weave it in later. And I can just pull that end right through to finish off and secure that one until I come back to it. Now we're going to go ahead and add the cactus branch. That's what I'm calling it anyway. I'm pretty sure it has an official name. Don't at this time know what it is. I'm sure by now someone's probably corrected me by the time you're seeing this video. So maybe there's an official name for it, but we're calling it cactus branch for now. So we're going to come back over there to these 7 stitches that we left unworked, and we want to join from the right side. So this is the right side, your even numbered road side right here. And we're just going to come right back over here and join with a half double crochet. Now, there's different ways to do this. We'll show you my favorite one, and I've got it linked out again in the pattern and in the tutorial. But basically, I start with a slip knot on my hook. I yarn over as if to make a half double crochet. And you'll notice too, I'm holding on to this tail end with my non-hook holding fingers, I guess. Oops, there we go. And then I'm just going to go right into that very first stitch, the first one of the row, and make a half double crochet. It's a little fiddly, but I do like the edge this gives. If you don't like this, you can just join as you normally would, chain 1, and then half double crochet right in that first stitch. That totally works too. After that, we are going to work a front post double crochet around the next front post double crochet, back post around the next, and then do that again, front post around the next, back post around the next, and then let's see, so we've got a half double crochet, front post, back post, front post, back post. I need one more front post. Just checking my instructions off to the side here. There we are. And then finally, we're going to half double crochet in that very last skipped stitch. So remember when we put that half double crochet in the end there, that was into the first one of those single crochets. So this time we're going into the other one to finish off that row. Like there. So there we go. Then from there, we go to row 24, which is just like row 3 again. That's that. Working even from the wrong side, where we start with a chain 1 and half double crochet in the first. And then this one is just so short because it's just our little branch. Back post in the next. Oops. There we are. Front post in the one after that. Back post again. This is only 7 stitches across, so it doesn't take very long. Front post again. Don't forget that little back post hanging out back there. And then, of course, finish off with a half double crochet in the top of your previous half double crochet. There we are. And this is where if you join with a chain 1 or join with a slip stitch and chain 1, it's actually a little bit easier to work into it on that next row. So whichever joining method you prefer. There we are. So I've got my 7 stitches across there for row 24. Row 25, we're going to chain 1, turn, half double crochet in the first stitch, and now we're going to decrease the top of this to give it a little rounded shape. So we're going to work a front post double crochet 3 together over the next 3 front post double crochet stitches, skipping both of the back post stitches in between. So let me show you how that's done. We're going to yarn over. You can see from the right side here, I've got 3 post stitches, 2 back post stitches in between. Those are going to get ignored. So I'm going to go around the first one, stop with 2 loops left on the hook, yarn over, come over to the next front post stitch, stop with 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, jump over to this third one, there we are, yarn over, pull up a loop, and now with 4 loops on the hook, I will go ahead and yarn over and pull through all 4 loops. You can see that just closes up the top of our little cactus branch there. Finally, of course, half double crochet in that very last stitch again, like so. And now we're ready to begin edging round 1. Let me put this down for just a second. We'll take another look at the finished one. Okay, so at this point we have essentially worked all the way up to here and then come back over here and made our little cap. So rather than turning to work the edging from the wrong side, we're just going to stay on this side and work an edging all the way around our cactus. Now it's very simple, just single crochet edging with green. The only difference is when we get to the top here, we want to work a front post single crochet in each front post stitch. And then when we come around to the bottom, we want to work a chain one at the corners. So as we work across the bottom of our cactus, you'll remember that there were 23 stitches total. So you should have a chain one, 23 across, single crochets, chain one, and then you can work evenly back up along the other side here. The exact stitch count down here doesn't matter, but it's just a good way to make sure you're working evenly across into each stitch, and then just generally work evenly so that it lays nice and flat until you get back up to the top. When you come around a corner, once in a while you might have to add an extra stitch just to get around the curve. You can see I did that with the coral right here. It's a little easier to see. Although right now we're talking about the green, and it doesn't look like I added any at this point. I would have worked a front post single crochet right around that top one right there, just to maintain that a little bit longer. If that confuses you, again, just working even single crochets should be fine. Most of these get covered up anyway. So really, again, just edging around one, we're just going to single crochet evenly around. So I'll do that a little bit with you here. You can see I've come to the end of my thumb here, or I keep calling it a thumb, it reminds me of a thumb, but the little cactus branch. So to begin their edging, I'm going to chain one and just single crochet all the way around. I find that working into rows of double crochet, I usually need 2 stitches in the end of each row, but of course these end in half double crochet, so 1 stitch at the end of each row seems to work pretty well. Right here where the branch meets the tree, we've worked into both of these stitches, so I'm going to work into the side of this row, and then I'm going to hop over to the side of this row to continue up to the top of my cactus. And of course on the full size pot holder, this would be quite a few more rows that I need to work into the side of before I get to the top. This is just our little swatch version. So however you like working into the edge is great. I like to go under 2 loops when I can, but I don't always stick to it. If it lays better just to put those stitches somewhere else, that's fine too. You can see here I've gotten to the top, and I went ahead and single crocheted in the top of that half double crochet, but this is where I'm going to work those front post single crochets around. So I've got a front post stitch here, so I'll just work a front post single crochet. So I'll go around it like I normally would, but without yarning over first, and just make a single crochet like that. So that is a back post double crochet there. So I'm just going to single crochet in that one. And then here we've got that decrease. So I'm going to go around the whole thing, work a front post single crochet there. Now it looks like I've got one more back post there. So a single crochet, front post single crochet around the next post stitch, single crochet in the back post stitch. Then I'm going to work a front post single crochet around this decrease. It's the one with the stitch marker in it. So as soon as I've finished that stitch, pull up my loop here, and I'm going to move my stitch marker up to this stitch. And that will come in handy later. So there we are. Now I can single crochet in this back post double crochet. And then finally front post single crochet right around that last one there. And then I'm back to just regular single crochets all the way around. And I like to do that just to maintain the structure a little bit at the top. But again, if that gets really confusing for you, if you don't like it, you can just work regular single crochet all the way around. So I'm just going to single crochet right down this side here. Getting tangled up in my projects in yarn. Here we are. So as I stated before, as I come down the side here, I'm just going to work evenly across. Sort of just eyeball it. If your stitches are causing the side of your cactus to shrink down, that means you need to add a few more. If it's getting really wavy and wobbly along the side, then you need to pull back and remove a few and space your single crochets out just a little bit more. Working into the edge is one of those things that just sort of comes with practice and time and experience. And even then, a good 30% of the time, you're going to end up redoing a section here and there. So it's okay to do that. There's nothing, you're not doing anything wrong if you need to pull back and work a section a couple times before you get it to look the way you like. So here I am down at the corner. You can see this would be the bottom of the straight bottom, our foundation chain. So like I said, I would just crochet all the way to the edge and then chain one. Oops, make sure I've got the right string there. There we are. And then go ahead and single crochet right across the foundation chain. So that should give you a good idea of how to work that first edging round, edging row, edging round. I guess it'll go all the way around, so it's around. So I'm going to come back here in a few minutes, and then we'll pick up the coral and we will work on our flower and edging round 2. Okay, now I have single crocheted all the way around my stubby little swatch cactus here. You can see I've got my front post single crochets right up there. At this point, it should look a little bit more like this, but without any of this coral color. That's what we're going to add now. So we're going to set aside the green part and pull up the coral colored yarn. And we're going to use this to make the flower and the edging sort of all in one piece. You guys know I hate weaving in ends, so I always try and avoid them when I can. So we're going to start with our color B here. This is the Coral Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie, and we're going to make a magic circle. Again, I have a separate tutorial for this if you're not familiar with the magic circle, or if you don't like it, you can start with a simple chain of 3 or 4 and just join it to work in the round and then work into that circle. So I'm going to start with my typical magic circle here, and then I've got my loop pulled up, I've got my circle secure, and I'm ready to begin crocheting. So I'm going to chain 1 and work 5 single crochets right into the ring. And when you make the magic circle, you want to make sure to go around both loops of that ring. And again, please see the separate video tutorial for this if you're not familiar with how to make a magic circle. So I've got 3 single crochets worked around there. Go ahead and pull my finger out now. Make 2 more, so we have 5 single crochets total. There's 1 and 2, and then with 5 on the ring there, I'm going to go ahead and pull that tail end to close up my circle. You can see I always stabilize it a little bit with my other hand, just so it doesn't get any wobbles in it while I pull that string. And then I am ready to join with a slip stitch to that very first single crochet I made. There we are. So we've just got a little circle of 5 single crochets. Now this is another great place to use a stitch marker. Let me pull my little box of them up here. When you're working in the round or ovals or anything like that, it's really easy to mistake the slip stitch for a stitch. Much more easy to do than when you're working in rows. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a stitch marker in the last stitch I actually made, because this was my slip stitch and I don't want to add an extra petal. We're going to be making 5 petals in our flower, so I want to make sure just to work those in those 5 stitches. There we are. So that will just help me know when I've gotten to that last stitch of the 5 single crochets. So to make our first flower petal, we're going to begin with a chain 1. Then we're going to double crochet back in that first stitch, the one we joined to. Just like that. Then we work 2 treble crochets back in that same space. So we yarn over twice, go into the back into that same stitch, make 1 treble crochet. There we are. Then we yarn over twice and do it again, right back in that same stitch. There we are. Just go ahead and work those loops all off pretty carefully. Then we're going to double crochet again in that space. All worked in that very first stitch right there. And then finally we chain 1 and slip stitch right back into that stitch one more time. So it's going to get a little tight, but this will give us that great flower petal look. So there we've got the center of our flower was that 5 single crochets, excuse me. And we've just made our first petal into our first stitch. So we're going to move to the second stitch and repeat the whole thing again. We start with a chain 1, then we double crochet in that next stitch there. This is getting a little tight and it's okay to take your time. 2 trebles back in that stitch. There's 1 and 2, then another double crochet. There we are. Then we chain 1 and slip stitch. So I'm going to do that 3 more times to make 3 more petals all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Again, starting with the chain 1 and my double crochet, 2 trebles, double crochet, chain 1, and a slip stitch in this next stitch. And I will continue around here until I've got 5 petals made, and I will see you at the end of our flower. Okay, so I've got 5 petals made for my flower. You can see I ended with a slip stitch in that last stitch of the 5, and I've gone ahead and removed that stitch marker. I'm all done with it now. So I'm not going to join to anything here. I'm just going to end with that slip stitch for my last flower petal, and then this is where I'm going to pick up, there we are, pick up my green cactus again. And this is where we come to that marked stitch. What I'm going to do is just, as immediately after making the flower with that last loop still on my hook, I'm going to go right into that marked stitch, get my working yarn pulled around here, and make a single crochet. I want to make sure that this ends up not crazy tight, not like a slip stitch, but you do want it worked right down up against the fabric, like so. And then of course at this point I can go ahead and pull that stitch marker out, and then continue, I'm going to just continue single crocheting around the cactus. And at this point the flower will seem kind of floppy, it's just hanging out right here at the top, just sort of attached by that 1 single crochet. But I'm just going to single crochet evenly all the way around here until I get right up back to the top when I've got about 3 stitches unworked. So you can see I'm just adding my coral edging here. So these last 3 stitches right here, 1, 2, 3, we want to stop right here. So if it helps, you can go ahead and put a stitch marker 4 stitches away, and I know that's where I want to end my edging as I work all the way around. Now again, those chain 1s in the corner, I would just go ahead and work a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet in each of those to work my way around the corner again. And as I pointed out in the finished one, there were a couple spots where it wanted to pull a little bit, so I just went ahead and added an extra stitch. It's just kind of part of the art of edging. Try it, see if it's pulling a little bit. See this, how this is curving here a little bit? That is where I would pull back to maybe right in the middle of that curve there, where it really starts wanting to pull my fabric together. I'll pull that loop back up. There we go. And then I'll just add an extra single crochet right in that stitch. And that'll give me the curve I need to get around without pulling my cactus down. Let me make a few more stitches here and hopefully you'll be able to see the difference. There we are. So you can see now that's really willing to lay a little bit flatter. Quite a bit, in fact, like so. It's not pulling up as much. I could turn it up if I wanted to, but it doesn't insist on flipping up now, and it will lay nice and flat on the table. So just continue working your way around evenly with single crochet, and I will meet you when we get back up to those last 3 stitches. Okay, so I've got my edging round 2 made. I've just got those last 3 stitches unworked. And those are essentially, well, they'll end up behind our flower. So what we want to do at this point is attach our flower on this side. So I want to turn it around. You can see this is the back. It's flipped over a little bit. So I just want to spin it around. This is happening in real time. There we go. Until it's facing the same direction. You can kind of tell that by making sure the top 2 loops of that first single crochet you made are nice and straight. So now I want to find the 3rd flower petal I made. Now I know this was my last one because that's where I ended up when I joined. So this will be petal number 1, 2, and then this one right here will be petal number 3. So having found petal number 3, then I want to find the 2nd treble crochet I made in that one. So remember we made those 2 tall stitches, so that would be my 2nd treble right there. Okay, then what I'm going to do is work a back post slip stitch around just that treble. So let me pull my loop down on my hook a little tighter there, flip my flower back over and find that stitch again. 3rd petal, 2nd treble. I'm going to go around that treble just like so, as if to work a back post stitch, which is essentially what I'm doing. And then at this point I'm going to go ahead and pull the working yarn down nice and tight so I'm not too far off that last single crochet I made right there. And then I'm just going to yarn over and pull that loop through that treble, or behind it, in front of it, however you want to consider it, and then on through that loop like so. So just like a regular slip stitch, but we're just going right around that 2nd treble. And you can see that really does just sort of disappear right there. There's maybe a little indentation there, but it's nice. It looks like a flower. So after we've made that slip stitch, then we're going to flip our flower forward a little bit here one more time. Sort of pull it apart if you need to from the cactus. And we just want to single crochet in those last 3 unworked stitches back here. This will just help tack down the flower that little bit more and give us our finished edging. You can see my first tail from the flowers right there. I'll pull that out of the way and just work right into that last single crochet there. And then from there, you can join to that first one with a slip stitch and break. I prefer to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to go ahead and cut my yarn. Again, make sure you leave enough to weave in your end nice and secure. Then I will put it on a, actually before I put it on the needle, I need to pull the loop up on through. There we are. Now I can put it on a yarn needle. There we are. And I'm actually just going to sew it down rather than trying to slip stitch over to this first one and possibly ruffling up our flower some more. I'm just going to go under those top 2 loops of that very first single crochet we made. Make sure all my yarn's back behind the flower here and just pull that. Go ahead and come to the wrong side here and pull that nice and tight. And then from there, I can go back into that stitch if I want to and start weaving in my ends. When I made mine, I like to weave not just through the edging, but I like to actually take this yarn and weave through the flower itself a little bit. Again, this just helps tack it down a little bit more and give it a little more sturdiness. Of course, this is just our little stubby guy here, but you get the idea. And I would just continue weaving in those ends and then, of course, weave in those green ends as well. But you can see we've made our tiny little cactus potholder there. We've got our flower nice and tacked down. If I wanted it tacked down any more or more securely, I could continue to use those ends to sort of sew it to the green down here if I wanted to, but I don't think it needs it. I think it looks really beautiful just like this. Let's take another look at our finished one here. And here is our finished tall cactus. You can see where we skipped our repeats to make our little stubby one right there and right there. But I've actually shown you all the stitches and the different rows you need for this pattern. You can see I've attached my flower, and then by weaving in those ends nice and securely, it really does give it a nice firm edge right there. And it gives it a great pop of color. Okay, so that's how you make the tall cactus from the Crochet Cactus Potholders pattern on mooglyblog.com. There is an additional pattern for a ball cactus, and that will be in a separate video tutorial, so keep an eye out for that. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a like, let us know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the Moogly Blog YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching.